We are live.
Welcome to the Best There Ever Was, the professional wrestling podcast where we talk about the art form that is pro wrestling and the emotional connection that keeps us coming back. As always, I'm Chris.
Facts.
We are the Curtain Jerks, and on this episode of the Best There Ever Was, we're going to preview Wrestle Kingdom coming up 2 nights, January 4th and January 5th. We've been talking a lot about New Japan, and this is, of course, the biggest night in the New Japan year.
Yeah, Wrestle Kingdom 15. It's in a stadium. It might not be fully booked. They just this week announced it's only going to be, I think, 4,000 per show. But hey, it's the biggest show of the year for a promotion with even 8,000 fans over 2 nights. That's still the biggest show we've seen in a really long time anywhere in wrestling. Wrestle Kingdom 15, just a few days away. We're going to talk about it.
Yeah. Before we get to that, we do want to acknowledge it's been a really rough week, sad week for wrestling fans. The passing of John Huber, Brody Lee, has affected us all. Obviously, we are really heartbroken about it. There are other people who will eulogize him far better than we will, people who knew him and worked with him. But we wanted to express our sadness and just, kind of get out our feelings on that.
Yeah, I mean, his peers in the industry have really, like, on Twitter, you can't go on Twitter without just seeing lots and lots of news stories. And for those, again, those are far more qualified people than us, but obviously, horrible tragedy, horrible loss for the industry, for his family, and it sucks.
It sucks. Yeah, that's all there is to say, Red. It sucks.
Yeah.
All right. So into Wrestle Kingdom, which we hope will not suck. Will bring some joy to the
I hope it doesn't
suck wrestling world.
And I'm not drinking a White Claw tonight, by the way. This is the most sophisticated wrestling fans show of the year. So I'm having a sophisticated whiskey drink, a Knob Creek, Big Rock. It's the sophisticated man thing to talk about some 40-minute long matches we're going to be seeing in a few days.
I'm drinking some cider. I'm not sophisticated at all. It's just thanks to pal Will Carey for putting these in the fridge at some point when we hung out a while ago.
Good for him.
Yeah. All right. So I think we're gonna start at the top. The main event over the 2 nights. Night 1, Tetsuya Naito against Kota Ibushi for the double titles. Night 2, the winner of that will take on Jay White also for the double titles. How are you feeling about the build to this one, Fax?
I'm liking the build. I'm not going to lie. I still don't know why the titles are combined. It feels like we're losing out on something, but I do think that it's somewhat logical, right? Where Naito looks a little bit like an idiot, right? In that he only had to wrestle 1 match, and he goes, "Screw that! Before the biggest match of the year, I'm going to wrestle Kota Ibushi the night before, and if I lose, I don't even get to be in that match." It's weird, but I think they've made it work. It's kind of within that babyface dynamic to say, hey, you won the G1. I'm going to give you a shot anyway, even though I don't have to, even though you don't have the briefcase. Does set kind of a weird precedent now that it makes you wonder if they keep doing 2-night Wrestle Kingdoms, if people are going to now just expect the G1 winner's always going to lose, or, but I would say the build has been good. I think Jay White's promos have been fire. I think that he's been just a super, super terrific heel. And they really set it up that it's insurmountable that either of the baby faces could come out double champions. It really, from a pure kayfabe perspective, all the money in Vegas is on Jay White, right?
Right, exactly. He's been set up for this. He's taken this to the fullest advantage. Generally speaking, Wrestle Kingdom, you don't have the heel with their hand held high. So I'm not expecting Jay White to come out with it. But he's manipulated the situation in a way that people always talked about in Triple H, always about the cerebral assassin. He actually did manipulate the situation, right, into a place where he's in the strongest position. I think, I feel like this is always kind of true with these Wrestle Kingdom main events where it's all kind of set up at the early in November, and now we're just kind of waiting for it. Like there's not much more to say once they've set up. These are our matches. But I'm excited for them. I mean, these are 3 of the best big match wrestlers in New Japan. I think they're going to put on matches that are worthy of, a big New Japan Wrestle Kingdom main event, and I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, and again, the one thing for me is again, I don't know that Jay White negotiated himself into the best position. It was more Naito negotiated himself out of a good position,
Mm.
and it makes me feel like, yeah, heel doesn't normally win Wrestle Kingdom. By the way, the guy with the briefcase almost never wins Wrestle Kingdom. I think Tanahashi over Omega is the only time that's ever happened. Um, he's the I believe the only G1 winner to ever actually successfully win the title. So that's two strikes against Jay White. But here's the thing: nobody's ever won the briefcase before. They've never had this before, where it's two nights. And because again, last year they did the match over two nights, but both guys wrestled the first night.
Right.
Whereas here, this is the first time Jay White's not wrestling that first night. I honestly think I personally think that they kind of gotta put it on Ibushi. It's kind of shit or get off the pot. I don't know if you heard Kenny Omega and Don Callis on Jericho's podcast. He even threw a little barb at Kota Ibushi on that, which I think was
Mm.
probably in character, but seeing like, well, what else would I be doing in New Japan? Just kind of idling and not even doing anything, like not for nothing. No, Kota Ibushi, and I feel like they really gotta get that title to Ibushi. But you look at how many times they cock teased Naito with the title in his Lij run, particularly the after the first chapter of his Lij run, after he lost the title the first time. I hope they don't do that. I hope, as a fan and for the young fans out there, I hope it's Ibushi. You and I have already talked about the narrative potential of Ibushi as champion, but I wouldn't rule out Jay White being champion. On the 6th.
Yeah, I wouldn't rule it out. I think there's space for it. Look, I like Jay White in big matches, but also kind of like he's only got one of the two of them. Because I think I'm curious to see him in that like really biggest level match, which he hasn't had before. He hasn't had the main event of Wrestle Kingdom yet. But I agree. I think we all agree. Ibushi has, I think, the most interesting places to go as a character, as champion. I think New Japan's best when you have someone whose character is evolving as champion. Okada, obviously, kind of perfect example, right? Where his character kept evolving during his title reigns. Both Jay White and Naito seem pretty set, and Ibushi feels like there's really interesting spaces. Just the stuff they've teased with Tanahashi over this year, the idea of him going heel, him trying to become God, and that goal.
And whatever that means.
Whatever that means, right? Which is a nice open thing. I think there's it feels to me like the most interesting possibilities are in Naito as champion.
Well,
Ibushi champion.
Yeah, and I would say Naito walking out as champion feels like the least likely scenario to me, right? I think that there's ready-made storylines and intrigue with Ibushi as champion, and I think with Jay White, I think the thing that people are already looking at, and they made a good deal on the Road 2 shows referencing it, like on commentary, but it really wasn't part of the narrative of the matches. Was this Bullet Club colliding thing, right, with him and Evil, and it really goes, is that more interesting if Jay White loses the big one, right, and still wants to be the leader of the Bullet Club, and they both are kind of losers, if that makes sense. They both lose to the baby faces. Neither one's champion. Or is it more interesting if Jay White has at least some title run, and really part of it too might think that, you look at the first MSG show, the main event was Okada and Jay White, obviously the biggest match of Jay White's career. Clearly New Japan thinks that Jay White, English speaker, is going to appeal to the American fans. In their mind right now, do they think there's any possibility of an MSG show in play for 2021? Right?
Good
Because
question.
that could also be another thing that really shifts it to Jay White possibly, or it could shift it to Ibushi, because they got to be watching AEW and seeing that a lot of these guys that have been around Ibushi are gigantic stars in the United States, even bigger than they ever were in New Japan. So that could be interesting too.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm certainly excited for these two matches. I'm excited for the next two we'll talk about as well. I think the other double night sort of situation is the junior heavyweight title with the best of Super Junior and Super J Cup winners, Hiromu Takahashi and El Phantasmo wrestling on night one, the winner getting Taiji Ishimori on night two. Those are two matches I'm looking forward to. In particular, though, I think night one, Hiromu and Phantasmo, if they've wrestled before, it hasn't been on a big stage. I'm really, really excited for that match.
Yeah, I almost wish the match just could be in the reverse order,
Yeah,
right? Because there's not a lot of dramatic tension with the ELP. There is no chance he's beating Hiromu, right? Hiromu is clearly going to go to night 2 at the very least. They're not going to have two Bullet Club guys have a finger poke of doom type match at Wrestle Kingdom. This is not WCW under Vince Russo. Like, New Japan is not going to do that in their biggest show of the year. So it does have a little bit of the ELP match, but hey, I would have said the same thing about El Desperado and Hiromu, and
yeah,
that's a MOTYC for 2020, right? No doubt about it. So ELP is a damn good wrestler. He's a damn good character, and he's somebody I hope that's going to get a big rocket push. If he can stay in Japan, again,
right.
that's another thing hanging over a lot of matches here is are the guys that don't live in Asia, don't live in Japan, are they going to be around?
Right. I think it's the right call, by the way. Just they're opening night 1, the main show with this match, which I think that's a smart call in the sense that not as much drama, but there's a lot I think to be said about them being able to really start the show well and have a big, fun match to open things up that could be pretty memorable. Because again, I think those two characters, really excited to see them play off each other. I'd forgotten really sort of how much I love Phantasmo until he popped up on the Super J Cup again. And I was like, oh yeah, this guy's amazing. And kind of the perfect heel foil for Hiromu, I think.
Yeah, and I think and it's also because I think that the night 1 is going to be probably the bigger worker night. Like that's going to
Right.
be the night that I'm expecting to see more overall snowflakes out of the critical consensus, and it's great to start there. And there's a couple dogs on that night. There are two matches that I might take an extended pee break during both of them. But there's a lot of stuff to really start the show strong, and obviously they're going to end this. There's no doubt. Obviously, we've seen Naito and Ibushi a bunch of times, but I mean that's going to be a banger regardless of what happens.
Interesting to me, though, that you talk about like sort of the main events, and it's for a big show like this. What really drives it in my interest, personally, I think for a lot of people, above the idea that it's just Wrestle Kingdom is a fun night, fun morning for us in America,
Mm-hmm.
is what's that big match? And I think the one that I'm excited for is not the junior titles. It's not the two main events.
Oh, so it must be the other 2-night event, the King of Pro Wrestling 2021. That's what you were talking about, right? That's where you're going?
Uh,
It's
no,
the only other 2-night spectacle where there's a 22-man New Japan Rumble night 1, technically pre-show, I believe, of night 1, and then 22-man for whatever reason, and then the 4 last men standing all win, I guess, and compete in a 4-way match night 2 to determine the provisional 2021 King of Pro Wrestling, which we just saw Yano closed out 2020 as the 2020 King of Pro Wrestling. Now we have to crown the 2021 one.
I was going to talk about Okada and Osprey. Um,
Oh, those guys are wrestling night 1.
they are.
Hmm.
Um,
Neither one of them wanted to challenge for the King of Pro Wrestling. It just seems like that's not for a title, right? Neither Osprey's not putting up the Rev Pro title, is he?
no, it's not putting that belt on the line.
Okada doesn't have any titles. I don't know why they wouldn't be in the New Japan Rumble.
Lost the King of Pro Wrestling the first time to Yano. Got paid
Yeah,
by him.
yeah, he did.
That's a good point. Maybe I've misplaced my excitement for this. Maybe a battle royal leading to a 4-way is really what I should be placing my hopes on.
Yeah, but let's just talk about the Rumble real quick,
Yeah,
and then
sure.
we'll go to Okada. Obviously, I'm in jest here.
Yes.
Okada and Osprey is I think the easy pick for the match of Wrestle Kingdom, right? If you had to pick one that's going to get the most snowflakes, if anything, in retrospect, I would say that some of my enthusiasm for the overall show has been waning a little bit, and it's really that now we know the final card. It just doesn't feel as epic and big as I was hoping, and it kind of feels like if this was Champion Okada with G1 winner Will Ospreay in the main event, that is a Wrestle Kingdom main event that really, really gets my motor going. But I'll settle for a 22-man battle royal. Um, and there's a lot of guys in this, right? We got Suzuki, we've got Ishii, we've got, I
Sure.
mean, Goto,
I presume
presumably,
Show,
I would assume Show. I would assume again Fale and Doki, who
Doki,
with the steel pipe, and
and
maybe with
you can win with submission, which means the Doki Choki could be very
oh
valuable in this.
the Doki Choki to get him into night two and into the main card. I mean, that's that would be great. That would
I
be great.
think maybe it's Yoshihashi and Doki. Maybe it comes down. The KOPW 2021 comes down to them.
Well, what about Hanare too? My other
Hanare,
guy, Hanare's he's still in Japan. At least he was as of the 23rd of December. I'd say there's a good chance he's going to be on that. Um, when we might talk about him a little bit later with the Juice Robinson spot, but it'll be fun. We'll find out. Maybe it won't be. I don't know. The New Japan Rumble is always kind of fast forward worthy or just skip worthy. It's for something in some regards where it's never really been for anything before. So I think it's still going to be terrible and just kind of a schmozzy thing. But I guess it has a little bit of stakes. It's going to be really awkward stopping it. That said, now that King of Pro Wrestling 2020 match at Jingu was the shits,
not great.
right?
No.
So I'm not super optimistic that the night two match is going to be great. We'll see what kind of gimmick it ends up being, but it's a thing.
Yeah, I mean, look, they've got a lot of guys that they want to get on the show, and there's only 6 matches per show because of the COVID restrictions. So I get it. Got to do a battle royal to try and get everyone on. And the KOPW 2021 thing, depending on who they put it on, has some potential. Maybe it's an interesting launching pad for show. I don't know.
Yeah, you're going to need to let me know if it's worth watching because as some of the listeners of our podcast know, Mrs. Fax's birthday is January the 4th. So I will probably not be able to watch any of the January 4th show, and I'll probably watch both the 4th and 5th show back to back on the 5th. So, if I can trim.
So you're going
that,
to have the classic Wrestle Kingdom experience, just like 8 hours straight. Just you're going to do the 2 shows back to back.
That's right, and again, I might. I'm not going to get into any spoilers, but I might do some light editing. I might even text you or some of our other friends. Just hey guys, here's the matches I might skip. Just tell me if I'm making a grievous mistake by skipping any of these.
Yeah, that's friendship. That's really why wrestling brings people together, is because at the very least, even if you have nothing else to talk about, you have to tell each other whether it's worth watching something, particularly on long New Japan shows.
That's right. Although, again, this one's not going to be nearly as long as previous years. That's why I'm thankful that if you tried to watch last year's show in one shot, that'd be quite an ordeal.
Indeed.
But you know what? Let's talk about a match I'm definitely not skipping from night one. Let's go back to Ospreay and Okada. What's your take? Why are you so excited about this one?
This feels so. I love Okada. I love big match Okada. It feels like Okada hasn't had the chance to have a truly big match in a long time. I mean, the G1 matches were pretty big, but other than that, it really feels like we haven't gotten proper Okada basically since Wrestle Kingdom last year.
One full year without a title.
Without a title. Ospreay is one of his best opponents. I went back recently and watched, some of their earlier matches. They're incredible. They have so much chemistry.
Yeah.
And the idea that this is Ospreay's first real big match as a main eventer, I think they are going to go all out. I'm just really excited to see where they go with this. Ospreay is one of the guys that I think they believe they have a shot for in the future to make him something big. This just feels like the match to me. I'm curious to see where they're going. We've seen this match. We know it's great, but we haven't seen it on a big stage. That's a great combination.
Yeah, and that's why I would have loved for a title to be on the line here. If this was for the IC title and then Ospreay can win it, that's huge. If it's for the world title, and it's a tradition, right? Guys typically don't win that first big Wrestle Kingdom main event. Naito didn't do it. Okada didn't do it, right? Tanahashi beat him in Wrestle Kingdom 7. It's just not Ibushi. Obviously, didn't do it last year. Ibushi might this year. If Ibushi loses again this year, Ospreay could leapfrog him in the pecking order.
Yeah.
The way that Jay White was able to jump a couple spots to the head of the line after Kenny Omega left. Yeah, I mean, this feels like this could be this could be kind of like an Okada Tanahashi, only obviously with Okada in the Tanahashi role of like, this is the first time we're seeing this at the Wrestle Kingdom. It will not be the last. We
Yeah.
might see this a few times.
Well, you make a good point there, because I think this match and one other I want to tie it with, it does seem like there's something a little bit lost in not having the IC title, because there are some matches that, if they were for a title, feel like they could have a bit more gravitas to them. I think you mentioned this is one of them. The other one that is sort of towards the top of night two is Evil versus Sonata, where it really feels like Sonata's someone who could use a big win. And while this win, I presume potentially a win over Evil would be big, if it was for the IC title or something like that,
I mean,
it really feels like it could push him forward and push him into a better place down the road.
And it feels weird saying this because obviously Evil was the champion for a good chunk of this year, but it really feels like that would almost be like the Bret Hart Mr. Perfect match, where it's like we're both kind of ready for both of these guys to just jump to the next level. We feel like both of these guys are going to be world title contenders for a long time to come. Obviously, Mr. Perfect had the injury problem, so that didn't end up happening. But that kind of feels like with Evil and Sonata, it just feels like these guys are they are the definition of that like upper mid card that they really got to get that IC title split out and get that thing to Sonata or Evil ASAP, right? Because
or maybe Ospreay.
Or I mean, they've killed the title, right? So it's dead. It basically has no history anymore, but that gives them a good opportunity to reboot the title, right? So when they do split it off, whether whoever walks out just drops it, which by the way, that could speak to Jay White. That's a very Jay White thing to do. I'm just gonna throw away one of these titles.
Yeah.
Or maybe somebody starts defending, because that's the thing that they kind of wrote themselves in the hole, right? Like, why would you defend one title and not the other? They never formally unified them. Maybe if there's a tournament. So I hope they do establish that as that kind of, because the Intercontinental title traditionally, more than like the WWE Intercontinental title, is traditionally been kind of the older guy title, right? It was the Nakamura title forever.
Yes.
Then it was really the Naito title before his last reign. And, it's which direction do they want to go? Maybe it's the Okada title, right? They keep it in the way they've been going. And this is the title that Okada gets because, hey, Okada for any title is going to make that title money. But I would prefer to see it be the Ospreay title, the Sonata title, that kind of guy ready for the next rung.
I can't recall if I've made the analogy on this show if we're just chatting, but the idea, because Okada has talked in the past about, I just don't want the IC title. All I want is the the world title. And so the idea of him winning it and then slowly like growing to love it, which one of my favorite, Shane Douglas, one of my big guys growing up, sort of ran that angle with the TV title in ECW in '96, where he like didn't want the belt, and then Too Cold Scorpio sort of forces him to challenge for it, and Douglas wins it, and he's like, "Oh, this is actually kind of nice," like holds it tight to him. The idea of him sort of slowly like growing to love it, it feels like one thing they could do with Okada, if they're not trying to vault him back into the main event, that could at the same time still allow him to have title matches, which I think is part of what we're lacking with Okada, that he's a big match guy. And even, he's been spending the year wrestling Yujiro Takahashi. So
right.
we won't on that point. One title that is on the line that I think is going to be a pretty good match here. Shingo defending the Never title against Jeff Cobb, newest member of the Empire.
Yeah, I mean, we talked last time that, again, I am so drinking the Shingo Kool-Aid right now. Like, you could put Shingo against almost anybody on the roster, and I'm going to like that match better than that guy against almost anybody else on the roster, right? I think Shingo's another one of that kind of lurking secret weapon that he could be a tippy-top upper card guy by this time next year. I really do. He's just so great. And Jeff Cobb is a guy that, they haven't done a whole lot with yet in Japan. So he's another question of, is he sticking around in Japan, right? And not just for the title, for the sake of the title, it's just in the sake of where are they going with this? Are they building up Jeff Cobb to have another match with another guy or not, right? Are they sending him home? And I think that's kind of one interesting thing, but it should be a hell of a match. You and I have both seen a lot of really good Jeff Cobb matches. I don't think I've seen a great Jeff Cobb match yet in New Japan this year.
Yeah. But
And
he has, I think he really improved in the G1. I remember feeling in 2019 that the G1 kind of exposed Cobb and made you go, he's a good indie guy. But this year I felt like he really sort of rose to the level. And by the end of it, it was a little bit like, oh, this guy really could be meaningful in New Japan down the road. And so maybe there's an opportunity, put the title on him, let him have matches with guys like, Suzuki and Ishii and Goto for the title, and build him up and have him be a real strong sort of second guy to Ospreay in the Empire. It does seem like there's a spot for him. I'd like to see him change his look just a little bit to like not match Ospreay, but just I always like an edit when a guy turns. Like give me a little bit. You're a little bit different now.
Yeah, I agree. A little bit different gear. He's also another guy that they want to grow in the U.S. He obviously has an established fan base in the U.S. He's not Hangman Page, but I mean, he has his fans in the U.S. already that'll definitely be there to come out for him too. So he has that kind of cachet. And I gotta say, World Tag League, Great-O-Khan, as I've said, is the worst I have ever seen wrestle in New Japan, ever. And the fact that some of those matches were somewhat serviceable, I got to give Jeff Cobb a lot of credit. So he didn't personally have a bad World Tag League, even though most of the matches he's in, unfortunately, were not that great.
And to be clear to the delightful people, his gear can still say suplex. We're fine with that. It's just a little bit different. See, suplex in Japanese.
That's right.
We're fans. They do great stuff. Speaking of the Great-O-Khan,
so this
wrestling Hiroshi Tanahashi in night one.
So this might be one of my. I might text. Is it over or under 6 minutes? And if it's over 6 minutes, I'm out. I don't care if somebody's like, you know what, it's not as bad as you think it is. I'm just skipping it. I'll watch it eventually, everybody. I will watch it eventually. It's just that if I'm fighting against sleep, I'm fighting against the clock. I at work that day, so I'm probably not going to get started about 5, 6 Eastern. I want to get to bed by a reasonable hour. I might not be able to catch O'Karn.
Yeah.
He's awful. And Tanahashi can be a miracle worker, but he will need to be to even make this watchable.
Would literally have to be a motherfucking Teresa level miracle worker, I think, to get what I would consider a good match out of Great-O-Khan. It's this, we've talked about this before. It feels like Tanahashi was probably marked for someone coming in who was going to be a fly-in for Wrestle Kingdom, whether it was Mox or we'll talk this week about maybe Brody Lee coming in or Miro. They talked about as a possible.
Right.
You've got to think that this plan changed a million times, and finally they were just like, let's just take a shot.
Yeah,
that's got to be it.
And we'll talk about with the Juice Robinson replacement too. That's another thing that kind of makes you feel like once Juice got hurt, like could we just kind of converge a couple things here? Could we just put like Tanahashi in that? But no, it is, and it's a shame because they do have this battle royal thing, and they were always going to do it, right? They do it every year, so it's not like this was a big announcement that they were doing one. You'd think that actually could be something that normally those things again are just silly old timers showing up and kind of wrestling around. Yeah. You could maybe use it, give O'Karn the Kane spot. Right, let him have a big battle royal that's really impressive. That might be the thing that kind of get him over, at least as a character, as like a monster, without being a good wrestler, because he's not.
The problem is he's not scary and imposing like Kane, right? He's just not that big. He's not that. I don't know. But there's something missing for me with him. There's a lot missing, but that to me, I think is one of the big things that even as just a monster, like Fale worked as a monster. It just doesn't even feel like he does that job very well. I don't know.
Yeah. Again, I don't really know what I'm supposed to even think about him. That's kind of how big of a failure he's been. And honestly, it already makes me hate the new Ospreay music because when he comes out to it, I'm like, oh man, Ospreay has this kind of power pop punk song that sounds like it came from, 2005, and there's fucking O'Karn, and I just want to turn the TV off.
You brought it up, and so we'll transition to this because I don't want to dwell on that match. Kenta was supposed to defend the U.S. title briefcase against Juice Robinson. Juice Robinson unfortunately broke his orbital bone during the Road 2 shows, and so on the last night, they decided to stick Satoshi Kojima in the spot, and all I could think watching that match was Toa Hanare when I say Toa Henare is right there, I
Right
mean
there.
he was Kojima's partner in the match.
Well, yeah, you feel bad for David Finlay. Went back to and you don't know whether it was his choice or New Japan's choice. It's like,
Right.
dude, if you had just stayed in Japan, he actually was in the finals against Kenta for the briefcase in the first place.
Right.
You got to figure that's his spot. I thought for sure when I heard, because originally when they announced it, I heard, I hadn't seen the show yet. I heard, oh, Juice got hurt. You see that, and then immediately they announced Kojima's taking his spot in the tag match, but not necessarily Wrestle Kingdom. So I'm immediately thinking, oh well, this is Henare. That'll be great. He gets a big spot. He'll lose, but that's fine,
He'll show
right?
fighting spirit.
He'll show fighting spirit. He'll have a big match. Kenta still goes over. Why the hell this isn't just for the U.S. title when Moxley hasn't defended it in forever? I don't know. They should just fucking make it for the title, and then just Moxley can, I get that Moxley owes them a loss, but like, wouldn't you rather that this just be for the U.S. title with Henare? Let Kenta have the title, and then Moxley comes over for honestly a bigger match than Kenta.
Well,
Whenever he's able to.
That's what sort of confused me about this. Is Kenta has kept the briefcase. Kenta makes sense to me as a champion, but not really sense as a guy who beats Moxley. That's why I kind of felt like I keep throwing out, but it just felt to me like, oh, Tanahashi winning makes sense, right? And I think Tanahashi would make a great U.S. champion too, in the sense that him touring the U.S. and doing main events on the U.S. shows, I think would be pretty great. I think he could bring crowds. But Kenta also makes sense as U.S. champion. But again, I don't see the set. But so, yeah, why not just have Kenta win the belt, defend it on New Japan, go back to the U.S., defend it on New Japan Strong for a while, and then figure it out when Moxley can actually come to Japan.
It really
is probably a long time from now.
Yeah, it's not going to be soon. So it feels inevitable they're going to have to drop this belt off him at some point anyway. So why not do it now? I think you're totally right. At least it gives you something on those New Japan Strong shows. And I also love what you're saying with Tanahashi as U.S. champ for when they do U.S. shows, which again, that's probably a long ways away outside of these empty studio ones. And you're not sending Tanahashi to do empty studio shows, I wouldn't think.
No.
But here's the other thing, interestingly enough, is, the Intercontinental title was exactly the same thing the U.S. title is now.
Sure.
It was also for an American tour. So you put Tanahashi with the U.S. title, you have Okada with the Intercontinental title, send them both over to Barnstorm support. I mean, again, I was there that night in Dallas, the G1 main event of night one of the G1 in 2019. Was it 2019, 2018? 2019. 2019. And that was a hell of a deal. You do that match in a couple of arenas, you're going to have a lot of new fans. There was a lot of people there that night that had never been to a New Japan show, and it changed their lives.
It feels like there's a real opportunity there, and that's, again, maybe that's a great way if they feel like there's not much main event juice in Okada at the moment until some things change. That's fine. I think a great way to use Okada too. I think they have to find, especially if they're going to be stuck with the same set of guys for a while, they've got to find some new ways to use these guys that feel fresh. I don't know.
Yeah, and again, I think you can make a good argument that, and I have, that the Never titles never melt more because there's so few singles titles. Mm-hmm. But you can't. The King of Pro Wrestling's the shits. Nobody gives a shit about it. No one's going to give a shit about it, right? So you can't have the Intercontinental title just in limbo and the U.S. title with Jon Moxley, who's not going to be in Japan, and his contract's not going to let him wrestle outside of Japan. So
yeah, well, they haven't really changed. The Never title, right? As much as it means right now with Shingo on it, they really haven't done anything unique with it this year, right? Shingo has wrestled the sort of standard guys you would see the Never champions wrestle. He's wrestled the heavyweight guys who are in the Never division of sorts, right, like Suzuki, and he's wrestled the other, like the juniors trying to step up and face a heavyweight like Desperado and Show. Mm-hmm. It's not unique. It's not like he's defended the belt against top guys in a way that hasn't before. He's been a Never champion. He's been great at it, but it's not like he's been put in a unique position.
I think, again, they'll just, when you go outside of the big shows, like the PPV level shows, having any show that's the main event with a title match in New Japan means so much more than title matches on Raw or Dynamite or NXT and things like that. It just means so much more. So that the title match, it's going to have a lot of fighting spirit. It's going to be good. And Shingo has totally delivered the goods. And I do think that that's in that absence of anything else that I agree with you. I think that this is the never title run Shingo was always going to have, regardless of the circumstances. It's just that it really stands out more. Whereas, and going back
Sure.
to what you were saying, a guy like Sonata, it doesn't feel like he's done anything special this entire year. Whereas if he had been able to wrestle for or possibly win an IC title, a US title, it feels like he might be a guy that we're talking about. And maybe that's a good transition to his match, which I think is the next biggest match that we haven't talked about. Him and Evil in, like Osprey and Okada, a special singles match.
Yeah, I mean, he made the finals at the G1. I think the G1 felt a little bit less this year because of the smaller crowds. I also think he ended up coming out of what was very clearly the second group, right? I mean, other
Yes.
than Evil, who was not super fun to watch, and Naito, look, a lot of guys are liking that group. Zack Sabre, Juice, Tanahashi, but it felt very clearly like that was the B group. And he won the group and lost the final, and it felt like, okay, that's a little bit of a step forward, but it didn't.
You had the good wrestlers
Yeah.
group block, and then you had the Naito wrestles 40 minutes every night block.
Yes.
Right in the main event. It was a little crazy. It was like very much a preview of what Hiromu would do in the Super Junior. That just he kind of puts the entire tournament or that block on his back. Obviously, Super Junior only was one block.
Yeah. I'm not. Can't say I'm super excited for Evil and Sonata. I think they'll find a way to make it interesting for Wrestle Kingdom, but I just don't. They haven't really felt like they found a good way to bring the hate in their matches. I don't think Sonata's character is really meant for it in a lot of ways. He's so stone-faced and cool, which is, again, works as a character, but it really struggles to see him be the face in a blood feud. You know what I mean? It's not a natural role for him.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of the interesting trickle down. So like we were talking about, Osprey beats Okada. I'm ready for Osprey to challenge for the world title. I am ready for him to be one of that next big challenger for the next big show. And I think it makes sense in kayfabe, right? Whereas I feel like they're setting it up that the winner of this match is the other guy that potentially would have a decent claim to be the next challenger for the big title. And I'm just not sure I'm feeling it, right? It's just like if Sonata wins, and I know with the G1, and again, I know the Japanese fans I think like him a lot more than we do, but so maybe I'm wrong in this, but if that's a banger, if this is a way better match than I think, and Sonata wins, hey, I might be there. I might be right there with him saying, hey, give Sonata that big main event title match at one of the big shows in 2021. But Evil, I am so done with. I mean, I am so done with him, and that's another reason why I kind of like Jay White winning the world title potentially. Is you can't have White and Evil both lose and be at all interested about these guys going against each other. It's like who's the leader of the loser division? Like it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I do worry again with so many of the foreigners potentially being shifted away. Do they maybe have Evil win because hey, we need to heat Evil back up because we're just running out of potential upper card guys? Although again, you can say the same thing. Sonata's right there, right? Sonata's not going back to the U.S. So right now, I'm just not as excited about these guys. I think they kind of burned this match already. That had they not touched since that tournament, this could have been a lot more special. And if you had kind of Sonata actively showing aggression to Evil this entire year, I think it would have meant more. It was kind of weird that they had kind of just been in matches and stuff like that. And then until the build up for this match, until the final of the Super J, like just all of a sudden, Sonata's like, I hate this guy and I want to kill him. And it's like,
Yeah.
wait, that was months ago, Sonata. What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, they obviously did it in the G1, then and had a big moment with it in the G1. Then they even went back to it right in part of World Tag League, which was that feels like it again. It's I don't know. As you said, it's not special that they're interacting with each other.
Well, and again, and it didn't seem like they were. Yeah, it doesn't feel special in any which way. Like it doesn't feel like a potential big main event. It doesn't even feel like guys not ready for the main event, but hey, that they were longtime tag team partners. I feel like if you'd gone back a year ago and said right after we saw Wrestle Kingdom 14, you said, hey, next year one of the big matches, semi-main event, is going to be Evil versus Sonata. I would have thought I'd be way more excited about that match than I am right now.
Yeah.
which is weird considering one of those two guys was champion for 3 or 4 months or whatever it was.
Yeah. Yeah. So so I think we've hit almost everything. The two things left are both tag title matches, both
Mhm.
involving Suzuki-gun. They're both tag champions right now.
That's right.
Zach and Taichi defending the heavyweight tag team titles against God, and Kanemaru and Desperado defending the junior tag titles against Master Wato and Taguchi.
And hopefully Doki is in the corner of both of these teams.
Sure.
Right? Hopefully we get a lot of Doki Choki. He'll also be winning the King of Pro Wrestling. He's going to have a very busy January 4th, January 5th, and probably January 6th.
Mm-hmm.
I really hope so. But, let's start with the heavyweight guys. I think it's pretty clear these guys are clearly going to be baby faces, right?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about that when we were talking about World Tag League, that it seems like it's got to be that Zach and Taichi are going to be baby faces in the Dome. They played babyface a lot during World Tag League, particularly when they were wrestling the Empire and the Bullet Club. Maybe that's the direction for Suzuki-gun, and I'm curious to see it. I don't think it's going to be an amazing match because I don't think it plays to their strengths that well. But not the babyface thing, actually more so the fact that God are more brawl and tag team.
Yeah, but again, I think Zack Sabre can kind of do everything, right? So I think Zack can play with whatever. Taichi is by the way, the dad bod. He's more like yoga instructor bod these days. Like I don't know if he's the dad you don't want your wife spending too much time with. That you're going to question things. Like he rips those pants off as a baby face. There's going to be some swooning.
Yeah.
So I'm in on it. I'm in on them as baby faces. I'm in on this match. I think that it could be good.
They've always been baby faces to me.
They've always, and now the world is treating them and the way they deserve. And I think it'll be good. Again, we go back to, are the Gorillas going to be in Japan for a while? Because that's obviously going to be a big piece of this. But again, I don't know. Like for all I know, like if you said, even if in a world where everybody was staying and Guido can do whatever he wants, I'm still not sure Suzuki-gun loses. Like they kind of are still the entire tag division. Like the G1 didn't like reinvigorate the tag division or anything.
No.
And God are one of the teams that I think they really got to beat. So I hope they win. I think they'll win. And I think they were always going to win. And I think it could be really good. And I'm really interested to see Grandpa Suzuki as the leader of a babyface party faction.
Yeah, as it should be. No, yeah, I think there's a lot. I think what they did this year was something I think a lot of us had been talking about for a while. The idea, first with Tanahashi and Ibushi, but then later, of course, with Zack and Taichi, of let's just, if you don't want to have a real tag team division, just make two potential single guys champion and figure out the challengers as you go. And then you can do the build-up matches will be really good because you could do singles matches. It just feels like a more natural way to treat the tag team titles. And I think, I want to see them keep going with that and push that even further out and just let that go.
And again, I think that they were both guys that I think Zack is a guy that never really got the respect that he deserved from the fans. Like I think everyone's like, he's a great wrestler, but he wasn't somebody people were really clamoring for having an even bigger spot, right? He wasn't the guy that when he did get title matches that you saw people like flipping out online. And I think Taichi's a guy that even people like you and I that watch all of it, we weren't ever super thrilled about Taichi. He was just a guy. He wasn't terrible. We didn't hate him, but he wasn't the guy that we loved his in the ring work. But
sure.
But it's together. In the ring, they're great together, and it's the most excited I've ever been about either guy, and really anyone in Suzuki-gun outside of Suzuki himself. Quite frankly, I think it's amazing. I think they should keep the good times rolling, and I think let's go one more full year. I want another full year of them as champions.
Just keep it rolling. Yeah, I think Kanemaru and Desperado may have been champs. It's been a long time. I don't know. They won the titles. I can't even remember at this point. It feels like they've been champions forever. There were some breaks in there, but it feels like they've been champions.
Those titles don't get defended a whole lot. And by the way, I'm so disappointed to see Despy with the mask back on. He stepped out at that first Road 2 show with the mask. Kevin Kelly talks about the mask, and it just was devastating to me on a personal level. That particularly if they are going to go with the baby face, which is the weird thing because these guys are clearly heels, right?
Right.
They're clearly the heels against Taguchi and Watto. Um, so I don't know, maybe that's part of it, but I'm hoping maybe we have all of Suzuki-gun turn babyface. He can take that mask off for good. Gino Gambino and Kevin Kelly were talking about how handsome he is. I'm right there with him. You know I like my handsome guys being babyface and with no mask on, Chris. Um, you
Well,
know,
look, the idea might be more also that they're not baby faces so much as tweeners, right? That they kind of sit in the middle a little bit and can kind of go either way. Because in particular, now that there's a second heel faction, right? A third heel faction, I'd say, in the Empire, that they may feel the need that Suzuki could sort of sit in the middle and swing back and forth as needed, which I think works.
I want him pure face, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Every faction, I was thinking through this. Every single faction starts as a heel. Will Ospreay just started a faction, started as heel. Bullet Club started as heel. Then the Elite kind of turned them face. Then they turned back heel. Even technically LIJ started out as heels. Obviously, a lot of people liked them early on. Chaos, they were all heels.
Of course,
Every faction starts as heels. And I think that organically you kind of turn them face, particularly as the guys get older. You look at Chaos, the reason Chaos are baby faces, and yes, a lot of it is just the length of Okada's title reign. He kind of became that Ric Flair. But a lot of it's just they're the old guys that people had been rooting for forever. And quite frankly, Suzuki himself is nobody's older than him, right? Of the guys that are still reasonably should have a slot on this type of show. And I don't know, it feels right. They should turn somebody else heel if they need more heels. I think they're fine with heels.
Yeah.
Let them be faces.
As I said, they're baby faces to me. And
don't change one bit of behavior.
Oh, no, of course not.
Be the Stone Cold, right? He's behaving the exact same way, just getting cheered now.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's gonna be. I said to you recently, I feel like I'm excited for the show the way I was excited for WrestleMania 7-8 years ago, before they became, 7-hour disasters. But where maybe I wasn't excited for one individual match at a real sort of deep level, but I'm excited to see the show. It's going to be a big show. They're going to pull out all the stops. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited in that way. It feels a little bit lesser in certain ways than Wrestle Kingdoms over the last few years. On the other hand, a slightly lesser Wrestle Kingdom compared to every other big show that hasn't really happened over the last year still feels pretty great.
Well, and it also does make you wonder, and I don't think they're thinking this way, but you got to think, okay, the way that things are going, and particularly things are obviously better in Asia than here in North America, is there a possibility they're already looking at their summer show and saying, well, it'll be warm again, we can do an outdoor stadium again, and by then we might even be able to sell close to every ticket to an outdoor stadium? Are they kind of already even kind of thinking, because that's the one thing that's really disappointing to me, is that there are all these matches that don't have enough stakes, right? And that's the one beautiful thing about New Japan. They have all of these titles so that on something like Wrestle Kingdom, they can just stack the card with nothing but title matches. And it makes even the titles that you don't care about that much feel that much more, because they're going to have their top stars competing for it. And it does make me wonder that if they just kind of didn't bother, because they're like, we'll do that in the summer. We'll do that whenever we can do that.
They've sold as many tickets as they'll be allowed to at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they'll be, and again, that number could go down in the next 5 or 6 days.
I think they've said they will not force anyone not to go. So I think they've sold more than, it's supposed to be like a 5,000 cap. They've sold some amount that's slightly more than that. They're not going to force anyone not to go, but they're being forced to stop selling tickets. So it's like whoever's got them is in. That's the reports. I don't know.
They should just figure out the biggest stadium in the country that doesn't have a baseball team, or not a major league, Nippon League baseball team. They should just book Dominion right now, start selling tickets right now, tell the government, listen, we'll refund people if we need to, but let's just start building for this. Call it Wrestling Dynasty if you want. Doesn't have to be Dominion.
Yeah.
You guys came up with that title. Just keep it. We're fine. Whenever you give us that show in the United States, the curtain jerks will be there. Take your time.
God. Oh, man.
Someday, Chris.
Don't make me forget. I'd forgotten that we've had a New Japan MSG show being teed up for us this year. Although, retrospectively, it probably just would have been Naito and Evil, so maybe it was okay. Maybe next year's going to be better anyway.
Yeah, although again, who's to say what exactly it could have been? Hopefully, it wouldn't have been, because I don't think that King of Pro Wrestling thing ended up happening at Jingo. I don't think that was
Fair.
the plan for that. So we would have gotten Okada doing some. Hey, maybe we would have gotten Okada Osprey. Probably not, right? Because
we'll get there.
We would have gotten something cool.
We'll get something great. They'll come around. They'll do something exciting. But for now, our excitement will have to be through a television, watching the people of Tokyo cheer as loud as they are legally allowed to during COVID times, with as many of them are as legally allowed as be able to put in the building for what probably going to be two of the best nights of wrestling of 2021.
And they certainly won't be drinking as much as our crew does when we go to the New Japan show and when we get the RBV chant going in the front row. But they will have that rooting, fighting spirit, and I'm really happy that there'll be somebody there. This is still the most excited I've been for. As much as my enthusiasm is a little bit waning from where it was 2 weeks ago, this is still the most excited I've been for a wrestling show, probably since the pandemic started. Maybe I'd have to think through some of the big AEW cards to think, but there's nothing immediately jumping out to me that I was in the pandemic era I was looking forward to from top to bottom as much as this. And by the way, those new King Switch shirts, both the Cobra one and especially the Spider one, are both awesome. So I'm going to say this might be the last time people are seeing me live on screen that I don't own a Switchblade Jay White shirt. And I would have found that ridiculous myself at some point that I would be saying this, but I may own not only one, but multiple Jay White t-shirts in the very near future.
So our next episode will be an intervention for facts, as well as a preview, review of Wrestle Kingdom. We'll figure out either next Tuesday night or Wednesday night. We'll figure that out.
Yeah, look at Curtin_Jerks on Twitter, Curtin Jerks on or The Best There Ever Was on Facebook. We'll probably announce it. Probably not next Tuesday, because again, I will be probably burning the midnight oil just to watch the whole thing. Maybe next Wednesday if we don't want to do it because of Dynamite. Maybe the following Thursday. We'll figure it out. We'll post it on social media at least a couple of days before.
All right, but until then, I've been Chris.
I've been Fax.
You've been the Curtain Jerks.
Adios.